All right, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you very much for partaking in today's Managing Apple OS Upgrades for 2019 as it relates to Jamf Now. So what we're going to look at as we are going through this presentation is we're going to get a good sense for how you're going to be able to use your OS upgrades as it relates to Jamf Now. And we're going to give you a quick update on what those upgrades look like, whether that was tvOS, iOS, iPadOS, or the new macOS Catalina. So I am your very humbled guest, or host rather, Christopher Eames. As I mentioned, we're going to go through a quick update on Jamf and who we are and how we've kind of gotten to where we are today. And we're going to go through a nice overview of understanding what the new operating systems bring to each of the devices that you may be using in your environment. And then we'll talk a little bit about strategies for success. And when we talk about those strategies, it's really how do you prepare for new devices, what's going to happen, how do you go through the walkthrough of it all, and how do you prepare your staff and your employees for what is a coming operating system update. And then we're going to take an actual look inside Jamf Now and kind of walk through some of those upgrade ideas and make sure that it's what you need and how you're going to be able to manage through it. And then we'll take some live questions and answers. You'll see that there's a question pane within a question field within your pane. Please feel free to ask questions throughout. We'll address them towards the end. And if there's anything else we can do to try and help you manage through this conversation, we will do the best we can. You'll also notice that there's a handouts field inside your pane. I have gone ahead and given you a couple of links that you can look at after the webinar, and we'll address some of them as we go through, but want to make sure that you have access to those links quickly and easily for future reference, so please feel free to download those. So let's first go through a quick Jamf update. Now, for anyone that has been to our Jamf Nation user conference or has seen our CEO, Dean, speak, he is absolutely engaging, and he is very good about trying to help everyone understand here's what you can do with Jamf as it relates to your Apple deployment. And so one of the things that he really embodies and that he really wanted to make sure that we emphasize is we wanted to take the spirit of the original iMac commercial where it said there is no step 3. And we wanted to do that same thing, and that's how we live here at Jamf. So it's a really good expression to understand that once you open the box and once you power on the device, that there really is no third step. Everything happens for you. And so with Jamf, what we've really done is we've built a system over a number of years that has really helped organizations to succeed in using Apple products and kind of extended that thought process of what a lack of step 3 would really look like, and especially from an enterprise or from a organizational standpoint. You're thinking about things like your end users. How are they going to get the information that they need? How are they going to be able to provide, or how are you going to be able to provide a unique experience for them that still enables them to be successful in their role? So as we move forward, what we want to look at here is our ability to grow as an organization in lockstep with how Apple has grown itself. Now, this is a quick look at how we've grown in the last 12 years, though we've been around since 2002. But you can see that in 2007, it was 13 members of Jamf, and they were really working hard to try and make sure that they provided a unique experience. Now, as Jamf has grown and as Apple has grown, you can see in those 12 years, we've grown to well over 1,100 employees. And those 1,100 employees are scattered throughout the globe, whether it's Australia or Japan or North America or Australia. And we've just recently opened offices or connections within Mexico. We are very, very strong in what we do and really embrace the opportunity to try and help any organization succeed, whether it's a large organization or a small and medium-sized business. We want to make sure you have all the tools necessary to manage your Apple deployment successfully. Now, as we look at how we've grown in terms of customers and managed devices, in 2017, obviously we had a 13,000 customer count, and we've over doubled that count in the last 2 years. Same thing with our managed devices. Now, maybe not doubled, but you can see we've done some significant growth in the last couple of years, going from 9 million managed devices to 14. as we continue to try and make our way up to that 20 million devices that we want to manage. Now, in terms of enterprises trust us for a number of reasons. As you can take a look, whether it's technology companies, whether it's media, or some of the largest companies in the world, we have done a really great job of making sure that they have the confidence in what they can do with their Apple devices as they move forward, while also maintaining, their ability to perform on what they want to do and how they want to achieve success within their organization. So we've done a great job of providing that choice and providing that ability for them to be able to do so without having any major issues, so to speak, when it comes to managing their devices. Now, Fletcher Previn has been a great advocate for who we are at Jamf and has really given us the opportunity to show our successes within IBM. He has been an advocate of using using Macs within his organization, and has really seen a lot of great success as it relates to time spent in troubleshooting and managing those devices, the ability to get the right, profiles updated to those devices, ensuring that he can have very little uptime in terms of making sure that everything is set up properly, but also having a much lower level or shorter time frame on fixing and troubleshooting issues. So Fletcher has been a great supporter, and as he continues to deploy Macs in his environment, he's saying we're deploying more Macs every month, but not requiring more help staff to support these users. And as an IT professional, or as a CEO who is managing a small or medium-sized business, or really anyone that's trying to deploy Apple products, knowing that you can do that on such a large scale and also being able to have some simplicity surrounded by it, you have the ability to do a lot to ensure that you're going to have some successes in managing Apple devices. So as we keep moving forward, there's a couple of elements that I want you to think about when it comes to some of these updates. And the biggest one, and we'll talk a little bit about it in a little bit later, is if you're thinking about scaling up, what do you need to do to manage it? But we're going to focus in on the simplicity of things and working on Jamf now. But before we get into that, let's really talk about what's happened this year. At WWDC in 2019, Apple made a lot of big announcements as it relates to the user experience. Now, at the conference, they unveiled a number of new operating systems, whether it's the start of iPad OS and taking on its own OS away from iOS, iOS 13, Mac OS Catalina, and even updates to TV OS on its own. So there's a ton of new software changes that have come across the board as a result of it. Now, the biggest one being security and user privacy were pretty much front and center, and they really made a huge bang, if you will, on how that's going to work moving forward. So changes to user enrollment. Now, one of the beauties about Jamf is that we've really believed in this user enrollment process and ensuring that you can separate your work from your personal data. And so while Apple has really gone full bore into what this looks like, Jamf has been a very big proponent in this user enrollment and this privacy assurance that has been big on Apple's mind in the last couple of years. And then within that, there's also enrollment customization. Now, this is going to be big as you start looking at Jamf Pro and potentially even at Jamf Now in the future. But for the most part, what that would mean is that you get to customize the message as they're enrolling their personal devices. And we're going to talk a little bit about that here in a second. And then responses to single sign-on. Single sign-on is important to note only because we do have a product that helps with that identity management. And ultimately, from an identity management, you want to ensure that the end user is recognized, that their device is recognized, and that they have the ability to gain those resources above and beyond just signing in using their user enrollment. So we're not going to go too heavy into those details. There are some resources, again, available in that handout that will guide you to another webinar that actually addresses the details of all of that. But I do want to kind of gloss over the spirit, if you will, of those three elements. So as we look at user enrollment for iOS, it really is about looking at that bring your own device or personal device management system and really giving the end user the ability to have some security and feel like it's a major part of their security, that they can protect their own data, their own information, but still, even from an employer, from an organizational standpoint, you want the ability to manage your own work data, right? So in this sense, what happens is that IT controls business-related data, but not the entire device. Whereas if it was an automated enrollment device or a supervised device, you have management over the entire thing. Now, within both Jamf Pro and Jamf Now, you've had this capability of sorts for quite some time, as I'd mentioned, and we're going to look at what it looks like within Jamf Now when we go through this presentation. But we have applied a lot of those specific APIs as it relates to user enrollment within iOS into Jamf Now in a preview mode. Again, I'm not going to go in depth with it today, but we do have another webinar that's in that handout that will help you to preview and see what that means to you if you're using Jamf Pro. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about open enrollment within Jamf Now. And the beauty about that is that there's a couple of options within open enrollment, and there's another option within Jamf Now and restrictions that really helps you to get this same feeling of user enrollment security really handled well and managed quickly. So we'll talk a little bit about that here when we go through the demo. Now, enrollment customization is specific to Jamf Pro. I will say that up front. But again, as you're going through this process and you're trying to learn what is important about what's happening, it's about providing your end users the security and the knowledge that you are sending the information, that you are sending a package, and that you are uniquely, you are giving them the tools that they need to be successful. And so with the employer or with this enrollment customization, you can send individualized personal messaging to your end users. And the beauty about that is that they can do a lot more, they can do a lot less, not troubleshooting, but they don't have to think as much about where it's coming from, and they know it's coming from you. It's a way to identify who you are as the provider and saying, hey, I am organization A or the Eames Corporation, and I'm making sure that you have all the details you need. And it gives them the ability to be able to opt in and take a look and make sure that they have all the details necessary. Now, MFA support or multi-factor authentication, this actually helps through that framework to make sure that, again, just from an organizational standpoint, that you have the right people and the right people are actually chiming in and going through the process properly. But at the end of the day, again, this is a great way to customize and create a secure network or secure way of your employees to be able to register their devices and make sure that you have the right people identified. Again, now identity is huge. We have a separate tool known as Jamf Connect, and we're going to show you what our overall portfolio looks like a little bit later. But this is to reduce the number of times that users have to sign in. So it's a single sign-on identity management system, right? And within Jamf Pro, you have the ability to use some configuration profiles to really select those single sign-on extensions. With Jamf Now, you don't have that as of yet, but you can use that through Jamf Now Plus, using some configuration profiles from, let's say, Apple Configurator as an example. So as you continue to evolve and manage your business and think about what ways that you might want to extend or expand what you're doing, this is a great way to take a look at Jamf Now Plus. Use some great tools like Apple Configurator 2.5 or even Profile Manager to see what additional features that are there that you may want to add and really provide a unique experience throughout. All right. Now, let's take a look at the new operating systems themselves. Now, we've talked a little bit about iPad OS just in brief. We're going to talk about iOS 13, and then we're going to talk a little bit about tvOS just to give you an idea of what's happening here. Now, iPad OS was interesting. I'm a lucky owner of one of the original iPad Pros, and the beauty about the iPad Pro is that it really, for for what it provided for iOS, it gave me a lot deeper tools and a much larger surface to be able to work from. And from that, there were things like multi-touch gestures that were unique only to iPad, but they were still part of that iOS code. And so it's not like it translated onto my iPhone. I didn't need them on my iPhone, but I definitely saw a unique experience on my iPad. Now, as iPad continues to grow and it's giving you the opportunity to really hone in on what the iPad capabilities are, there is a huge opportunity here for iPad to separate itself from iOS. Now, the reason for that is, again, there's a lot of tools that are built into it that make it really spectacular. So iPad OS was necessary only because it wanted to dive in on those specifics and create a more unique and a more fluid opportunity for what the iPad can do. So it's purposely built for the iPad. It will give the iPad a very strong, unique presence in that Apple ecosystem while still being able to leverage some of those same unique tools that you can get from either iOS or even macOS as it becomes a stronger desktop browser using Safari, or having some of those same iOS features in terms of using the App Store for a lot of the apps that you're buying. So it's exclusive only to iPad, but a lot of people ask, well, is it going to be ready to be used for Jamf? And Jamf is always day zero ready. And so when iPad OS was announced at WWDC, we went straight to work to make sure that we had everything in compliance for the iPad, specifically for that reason. And what would happen is, once it launched on September 24th, which was this past Tuesday, we had everything ready to go, and we met all those requirements. So we'll show you what that looks like within Jamf now, and we'll definitely have the ability to help you feel supported as you move forward. Now, with iOS 13, there's a lot of great innovation that's happened. Now, when we look at Mojave, we had for macOS, we had a great instance where dark mode was introduced, and it was a great experience. I have my desktop in dark mode 90% of the time because it's much easier on the eyes for me. Now, if I think about it in terms of dark mode on iOS, again, I just recently updated it, and it's worked brilliantly and lovely, and it's actually, again, a much easier experience on the eyes. So dark mode for iOS was introduced, and again, it's going to revolutionize your screen experience. Sign in with Apple has now made its debut, and the beauty of that is that now you have the ability to not just sign in with an email or your Facebook account, but you can actually have the security and the privacy of using your Apple information. And there's a number of different ways that Apple's gone through and created some secure processes, like masking the email and giving you the ability to select how you want to be viewed or seen or register your account. So everything within the sign in with Apple debut that's going to come is really meant for employee or user experience and privacy. And we want to make sure that we stay in compliance with that, obviously being day zero ready. It's going to be 30% faster for Face ID unlocks, and then obviously updates for Siri and the apps are going to be a lot quicker. So it's a much nicer experience throughout. Now, in both iOS and iPad OS, there are certain configurations or certain commands, MDM commands, that have been updated and added that are really going to help with managing those devices. Specifically, if I look at it from a Jamf Pro perspective, there are SSO extensions in the configuration profile. Again, that's that single sign-on extension that we talked about just briefly. But then if we also look at it from the restriction standpoint, in both Jamf Now and Jamf Pro, we have the ability to either disable or allow Find My Device, Find My Friends, or the Wi-Fi power modification. All of those are available within Jamf Now as much as they are in Jamf Pro. So we wanted to make sure that those major elements were found in both systems. So we'll take a look at what those are and where to find them as we move forward. Now, tvOS is not a huge part of Jamf Now, at least not right now. Obviously, there are some configuration tools that you can use to build a profile and use it within Jamf Now Plus under the custom profile management or custom profiles portion of Jamf Now Plus. But if you're looking at using Apple TV, there's a couple of things that you want to take note of. Like, it's a great new user interface. You have the ability to have a multi-user experience. I know I've used that with Netflix as an example, where either my son has his own, my wife has her own, and I have my own, so we can all curate our own experience and having a unique way of watching what we want to watch and never having to cross paths, if you will, within Netflix. And so that ability to do that same thing with the Apple TV, that can go all the way down to gaming and what kind of apps that you might be using. So I can have my son have a bevy of apps that are specifically for him under his user profile, and same thing for myself. And then along with that gaming perspective is the fact that there's a much larger gaming controller support that's available. So DualShock controllers or anything that's a third-party Bluetooth remote controller that you're using for excessive or strong gaming can now be adopted with the Apple TV. And then along with that are some great updated apps that are going to be coming. Apple TV is going to become Apple TV Plus. You have Apple Music that's going to have some great new interfaces and great ways of exploring music. So all of these things are tremendous for being able to move forward within Apple TV. Now, along those lines is some new updates to macOS Catalina. So the reason why we broke this out from the other ones is that there are some significant changes to Catalina that will impact your experience to a certain degree, but in a positive way. So a new file system and architecture that helps to separate user data from the operating system itself. So the operating system will carry its own unique set of rules and data, where the user data can now be separated from it, and it just creates a faster and more relevant experience for whoever's using that device. And then if you think about privacy preferences, policy controls, that's a mouthful. The PPPC continues to evolve. So what that means is that as certain tools within your device might be needed for logging in or even just for chatting. So if you think about social media, if you want to be able to use your camera to do a live stream of something, or maybe even you're going to do a live blog and you have to allow those permissions to use your camera, to use your mic, or whatever it may be. A lot of those things are going to start popping up and saying, do you want to allow this to happen, or do you want to allow this site to use those resources? And so there's a lot of ways that you can leverage that when it comes to inventory or managing your media. And so all of them will be available as macOS Catalina continues to roll out, which will be later in October, or coming up in October. But for the most part, something that you want to be prepared for and take a look at. Now, one of the amazing features that Apple has always had is activation lock on iOS. Now they've extended that for macOS. And the beauty about this is, if you're not familiar with activation lock, it was really, I think when it first came out, it was really intended for the consumer. So what happens is a device gets married to an Apple ID upon activation. And when that happens, whether someone were to retrieve or steal the device and try to wipe it, once they start the device back up, because it's married to that Apple ID, it does not allow them to move forward. It kind of locks the device in place, which is why that lock is there. Now, it brings, I'm going to call it parity across all of your devices, because now with one Apple ID, you can basically lock down all your devices and prevent them from theft. So Apple has really taken a page out of what they learned in iOS, brought it to macOS, and has basically said, look, now you can protect your data, protect your software, and protect your hardware from being used, so no one else can get into it. Now, on the flip side of that, as an organization, you wonder to yourself, well, if I have employees logging in with their Apple IDs and they decide to leave, how am I going to be able to get back into this device? Truth be told, if you have them supervised, or you have them you have them purchased through auto enrollment through your either Apple team or carrier channel, whichever one it is, as long as they're supervised, you do have a bypass feature that will allow you to unlock that device without needing that particular employee's Apple ID. So all these things are still very alive and capable, and helps you to make sure that you can recover the device, recover the information, and ensure that you don't have to worry about what happens next. All right. So let's talk a little bit about strategies for success. Like, how do you prepare for deployment? How do you know that you're prepared for deployment? Well, the beauty about using Jamf is that we are a day zero compatibility company. So what does that mean? That means that all the baseline functions of the OS are definitely taken care of, and that you can still ensure success in using our product as the operating systems are rolled out. So we go through the beta process. We ensure that you can hold on to those core functions that you're using in our MDM for, and we'll always make sure that as those releases come out that you have the ability to still work seamlessly with what you're doing. Now, new key feature support, we add as many of them as possible on day zero or by day zero. Not every single new feature may be added at that point in time, but again, because we understand that the baseline compatibility is important, we know that you won't lose any functions. But some of those big new key features that you need for support will absolutely be included. So if I look at the single sign-on options, we made sure that we had the ability to capture the feeling, the spirit, and the functionality for it, so that way you can manage it from your MDM solution. Whether it's the find my friends, find my device, and so on. Again, these are key features that you want to have control of, and be able to allow through restrictions. And so we wanted to make sure that they were part of our overall solution. We want to make sure it doesn't impact any of your critical workflows. We want to make sure that it's more than just an uploading of a profile, that it's actually built into what you've already done at that point. And because we are active in our beta program for testing, or you might be doing the same thing on your end with your software, we want to make sure that it's a stable solution based on those new operating systems. So as you continue to go through that and you start exploring new workflows and with those new features, continue to test, continue to do it. You can do it simultaneously in some cases with Jamf Pro, with Jamf Now. You want to make sure that you maybe have a unique device that you can test those particular blueprints on, and make sure that you can activate some of those new features to the best of your ability. But why is day zero compatibility important? So we want to reduce those security vulnerabilities. So the second you have a chance to use the new operating system, or if you're still not sure if you want to, you have the ability to kind of work through it using Jamf Now and Jamf Pro, and really ensure that you can reduce any type of risk or vulnerabilities at that point. It'll keep your end users happy because they'll stay connected to what they're trying to do. And then it will keep them productive at the same time, because if they don't have to worry about any changes or any updates or anything that's going to derail their workflow, then you're doing a good job on your end. So why not have the resources or have the product that's going to help you to do so? And so both Jamf Now and Jamf Pro will actually help you to do that. And you can see here that we have a long history of being able to do that on the within our products. And so if we look at it from, which one is that? Was that Snow Leopard? I'm trying to remember which one that was. Lion. We have a long history of being able to support everything from day zero. And it's it's a compliment, and it's a testament to what we have continued to try and do to stay ahead of the curve. So tvOS, when it first launched at the same time as iOS 10, iPadOS as of recent, as it launches alongside iOS 13, all of these things are ready to go out of the box the moment you update, or the moment that update is available to the public. So rest assured, we are there every step of the way. So as we look at day zero compatibility, we already know iOS 13 is launched, and we've been compatible across our entire portfolio: Jamf Pro, Jamf Now, Jamf School, and Jamf Connect. We also know that coming soon in October, we'll have Mac OS Catalina that will be prepared and supported based on Apple's betas for those operating systems, and how we've been able to adjust our product accordingly. Now, there are some things in the betas that may not apply when the full launch comes out, but that's also where we continue to evolve, if you will, or continue to improve our system to meet some of those coming changes in the OS. And same thing can be said for tvOS. Now, the release is still to be determined, but we will be prepared again based on Apple's betas. And as you know, this past Tuesday, both iPadOS and iOS 13.1 were released. And yes, we continue to stay in compliance with all of those operating systems. So we are ready, and we will show you what that looks like here as we move into Jamf Now. Now, when you're preparing for those upgrades, there's a couple of things you may want to do. So maybe you want to force the upgrade yourself. Let's say you have some employees that are really, really bad about updating their operating systems. Within Jamf Now, you can go in and provide and push those updates automatically. We'll take a look in the device inventory, and I'll show you where you can do that. But at the same time, maybe you don't want them to update right away. So maybe you want to delay that upgrade. So there are restrictions that allow you to delay the OS installation up to 90 days, and that's available for macOS, iPadOS, as well as iOS. Now, tvOS, again, not available in Jamf Now, but do want to make mention that if you do look at it from a deployment standpoint, whether you have tvOS in your system, whether it's a hospital and you're using it for healthcare and you're using it for patient bedside experiences, or maybe you're even doing it for conference rooms, you want to make sure that you look at your Jamf Pro interface for that one and make sure that you can delay it so that way it doesn't ruin anything that you have installed or that you have working already. And then the beauty about delaying the operating system is that it also gives you as an IT administrator, as an owner, the ability to test the validity of the OS based on what you're doing and make sure that it will be stable and secure as you move forward. So it's a great opportunity to just learn about the operating systems, do some base level testing, and look at some of those advanced features and see how you can get the most out of the operating systems as it relates to your deployment strategy. And the best thing you can do, the absolute best thing, is communicate the first time, communicate the second time, and over-communicate every chance you get. As you continue to communicate with your employees the reasons why it's important that they either update or don't update their device, it's again important for you to make sure you continue to let them know this is not the right time. We have too many things at risk. We will let you know when it's available. So determine when you want that operating system to be updated based on your testing. Communicate to the staff as early as possible, as often as possible. And then once it's ready to go, tell them it's available now. Or again, defer back to being able to update it automatically and just tell them, we will do it for you. Don't worry. Nothing will happen to your personal data. Nothing will happen to your work data, and everything will be secure at that point. All right. So we've talked a lot about the Apple upgrades, and you really want to try and figure out, well, which way am I going to go with this? You have to think about your overall deployment strategy and think, am I trying to build a scalable solution that I can easily insert a device and know that every single portion of what I have to do is covered? And do I want to make sure that I can grow at scale without having any issues? And on the flip side, maybe you're just thinking, I just need a simple solution. And so I just want to know that it's going to work well and just kind of handle that simplification as much as possible. So it's a matter of how granular of control do you want over your devices as you scale up, or how simple of a solution are you looking for as you continue to deploy. And so as we look at things, this is the overall product portfolio that Jamf offers. So if we look at this, we talked a little bit about that single sign-on solution that Apple's providing, and Jamf Connect really is our way of being able to manage that single sign-on capability. And so we could look at things like Salesforce or Okta or Azure AD and really have a way of connecting to that single sign-on solution using Jamf Connect. Again, there's a much more in-depth conversation around identity management in Jamf Connect as it relates to OS upgrades in your resource packet, and so definitely take a look at that if you're interested in learning more. But for the most part, that is how you would be able to manage some of those identity management solutions within Jamf. And then as we start talking about scale versus simplicity. Like on the simple side, the simplification of using Jamf Now is really meant for you to be successful at any early stage or growing stage, depending on what you're trying to do. Jamf Pro and Jamf School are great solutions, obviously, from a large organization or a large school to be able to deploy some great solutions in managing those devices. So take a look at those. And again, in your resource packet, there is a products link that will allow you to go straight to some trial requests if you haven't already done so. But it will help you to understand a little bit more on the ideas of what Jamf Pro can do and what Jamf School can do. And it'll give you the opportunity to enroll in Jamf Now if you have not done so already. And then Jamf Nation, by far, is the world's largest online community of Apple administrators. And in that forum, you'll have the ability to ask questions of other administrators. Take a look at some of the resources that are available that have been posted and that allow everyone to really get some feedback from their peers in order to try and find some solutions for things that maybe we haven't thought of ourselves or that we're looking at trying to include in our Jamf Pro or Jamf Now solution. So take a look at Jamf Nation. It is a great process to be able to work from. Now, as we look at our product overview within Jamf Now, because we want to focus on simplification on this call, again, zero-touch deployments, basic configuration. The inventory screens are phenomenal and easy, but it really gives you the ability to simply and securely manage those devices at a really great price. So if we look at the standard offering, Jamf Now is $2 per device per month, and it gives you some basic management tools, the ability to distribute apps from the App Store and the B2B App Store, while also giving you macOS and iOS restrictions that we're going to look through. And then we recently added Jamf Now Plus, which gives you the ability to call it manage on a little bit of a deeper level. So whether it's custom third-party macOS package files, or maybe it's a custom iOS app that you've built internally solely for your organization that's not available to the public through any of the app stores. That gives you the ability to manage how you want that experience to continue to happen. And then one of the biggest beauties that we've added recently to kind of add a little bit of scalability, if you will, to Jamf Now is the ability to use custom profiles through Jamf Now Plus. And what that means is that you'd have the ability to use applications like Profile Manager or Apple Configurator, where you can build a custom profile, and you can actually link those profiles into Jamf Now and have a second layer, if you will, of management controls that may not be available in Jamf Now at this point in time. So it's a great way to be able to manage through some complexity and some scalability using other tools while still using something as simple as Jamf Now to manage them. Now, you can get Jamf Now directly from our sales team. If you're already working with an account executive or a business development rep, do inquire about other areas or other levels of Jamf Now that you may want to get involved with. You can buy them through Apple, both as a SKU in store with the business teams, as well as our Getting Started kit that allows you to exclusively buy it from Apple and get 3 months for $79.95 of unlimited devices of Jamf Now. Also, your channel partners and carriers. If you're already buying through a CDW or a carrier like T-Mobile, it gives you the opportunity to purchase Jamf Now credits through those store teams or through those teams and ensure that you can get started as quickly as possible. And then once you're in the product, or if you've signed up for or registered for a product through the website, you can actually purchase it directly through the product itself. As we look at Jamf Now Balance, which is one of the ways that you can actually manage the purchasing process, this is meant to be a little more flexible of a purchase process for anyone that's using Jamf Now. So you would prepay for a certain amount of service. It is sold in $1 increments intentionally, just to make sure that you can kind of see the math of it all, if you will. And because we used to sell license packs, they're still available, but again, they don't make it as flexible. So if you think about it from a wallet-based system, if you have 20 devices today and you've purchased a license pack for all 20, and then for whatever reason you grow within 3 months, you have to buy another 10, and you buy another 10 license packs then. You have offsetting time frames that you have to renew your license within Jamf Now. So the beauty about Jamf Now Balance is you can say, I have 20 now. I'm going to essentially manage it for 12 months at $2 per device per month. And so now I have an overall quantity that I'm working from. And if I add devices, then it's going to basically modify my equation a little bit. So instead of maybe being able to manage 20 devices over 12 months, if I added 10, now I have 30 devices. Maybe the remainder of my time is going to be shortened. Well, the remainder of my time will be shortened based on how many devices I have. But when it comes time to renew that balance or renew my wallet, I can actually fill it up with a great deal more as it relates to all 30 devices instead of having to worry about, okay, I have to remember in the next 3 months to update 10 more devices. You could do it all in one fell swoop and ensure that you have everything covered. And as I mentioned, for $79.95 exclusive to Apple stores is our Jamf Now Getting Started Kit. It's unlimited devices for up to 3 months, so it gives you a full immersion or a full experience of how to use Jamf Now without having to worry about activation codes. It's all in the box. You can have a full deployment solution ready at your fingertips after testing a few, and then just kind of wait and see what happens at the end of the 3 months. If you love it, you continue to use Jamf Now Balance. If you still have questions, it gives you 3 months to be able to ask us anything you need to from a support standpoint and make sure that you're getting things set up the way you need to. So it's a great solution for anyone that's going to kind of get started through the process. So as part of all this, I want to make sure that we take a look at the actual product itself, because the best way to get an experience in Jamf Now is to ultimately see what Jamf Now can do. So why don't we dive into a demo here, and we'll start working through some of those key features that we were just talking about. So just bear with me for just a moment here. Here we go. All right. So here we have our Jamf Now login, our Jamf Now screen. You'll see from an inventory standpoint, I'm going to shrink this a little bit just to kind of get a few more devices on the screen. So here we go. So we talked a lot about the new operating systems and how they're going to influence our experience here within Jamf Now. So some of the things that we'll first want to take a look at. So we have supervised devices for iOS. You'll note we don't have any of those devices supervised yet for macOS, mostly because Catalina hasn't come out yet. We haven't been able to update these devices as being supervised. But once they are supervised and we start looking at activation lock, this will be something that we want to make sure we can adopt and influence, and we continue to test to see if we can, to make sure that we're ready when Catalina launches. Now, we were talking about what do you do in terms of OS updates. Maybe you want to enforce it yourself instead of having to worry about your team having to say, hey, can I update it yet or whatever. You can basically say, hold off, I'll do it when the time is ready. And here you'll see, as it relates to iOS 12, this one has not been updated yet to iOS 13. But I could simply go in and just force the update and say install update right away. So now what would happen is it would install the update. The only thing your employee would have to do is, once the update is finished, is that they would ultimately just log in with their passcode and everything is done for them. Now, with some added features, depending on how you manage those feature upgrades, certain features they'll still have to say, like, do they want to use dark mode? And so any of those new updates will have to be adjusted by the end user themselves if you allow it. But for the most part, everything that can be done from a updating standpoint, you can do and force from this area. We talked a little bit about activation bypass. So within the system, we do offer activation lock bypass codes. So again, if that employee were to leave and you need to regain access to the device, simply putting in this activation bypass code in the password field will allow you full access to the device itself. So it's a really great feature to be able to use as you move forward. Now, we also talked a lot about user enrollment. User enrollment is huge when it comes to being able to have that BYOD experience or bring your own device experience heightened to an all new high. Now, I will say this: as we explore blueprints, there are certain aspects within blueprints that require supervision. And so I'm going to kind of quickly go into restrictions here. I'm going to go here for a quick second because I want to show something here as well. But as we're doing this, you'll see here, it'll say supervision required, and it's more so about USB accessories. As you go through and you look at many of these new updates, you want to ensure that if it's a bring your own device experience, you cannot have supervision required. You can't have a restriction that has supervision required checked off because that will not apply to the device. Long and short, supervision meaning that you own the device, you can do a lot more to it than if you don't own it. So things like managed app data segregation. This is beautiful, and this is part of a two-step process that you would use for that user enrollment thought process. I want to check this off because anything that I share between the documents that I'm sharing through a share file, or an email, or the apps that I'm sending for productivity or for access to information like a Dropbox and so on, all of those things that I distribute within email, apps, and documents are now separating the work information from the personal. So where the user enrollment process that Apple has now launched is essentially new to them, or new to the system. They've actually had this managed app data segregation for quite some time now, and we've managed to use that as part of our system to help you as an end user really take advantage of everything you need to from a security or peace of mind. So we want to ensure that you have that separation of personal and business data already worked through. So managed app data segregation is the first step in making sure that Jamf now can comply with that user enrollment spirit. The second part is that as I go into open enrollment, this is ultimately the way that you would send that message or send that profile out of this blueprint to that employee to ensure that they can get the right tools that they need. Now, I have to say this I have to express this very confidently because I know that I've seen it work on my end as a remote employee for Jamf. I use my own personal devices for work, and it sends me the blueprint or the profile that I need to make sure I can have the devices or make sure I have the applications and the resources needed to work. So this link would allow me to enroll a device and continue to get the resources I need. So they would send it to me. There's usually an access code that I'd have to enter to make sure that I have access to the right blueprint, and then it would install that blueprint profile onto my phone and give me those tools that I need to be successful. So this is a really great process and a great option to be able to take that user enrollment feeling and really gain that same kind of access or that same kind of flexibility for personal and work information to be separated without having any issues around privacy or information. So again, restrictions go into security because, again, we are talking about a security restriction. And then within security, it'll be the very first one you check off. Now, we also talked a little bit about the new Find My options. And so within that security field, if we scroll to the bottom, you'll see we've added all three Find My Device, we've added Find My Device and Find My Friends. But in this particular case, this is, again, supervision is required. So the reason for this is, again, if they log in with their Apple ID on a work-owned device, you want to disable that portion primarily because you have access to being able to, well, you don't have to. Let me rephrase that. You don't have to disable Find My Device or Find My Friends, but if you want to, again, separate certain personal functions on a work-owned device or an auto-enrolled device, you can disable those functions here very, very easily. So we've taken some of those new features that Apple has rolled out, and we've added them to our operating system or into our software here. We've also been able to provide a list of network and cellular security options as well. So if you haven't taken a look at any of these, I would absolutely advise you to do so. It will really help with the overall experience in managing through Jamf now. All right. And then the last thing that I also want to show you, so I'm going to close off these two. We talked about being able to force the updates if you've already planned for the updates to happen, and you want to make sure people do it, but maybe you're not quite ready to actually have them install the OS updates. So you can delay the updates for as little as 5 days, all the way up to 90, depending on your testing and what you're trying to achieve. So at the end of the day, you have the ability to either enforce the update or prevent the update from happening, depending on what you're trying to do. All right, so we've looked at open enrollment. We've looked at the blueprint and security functions that you can do, forcing the update, denying the update, and really taking a look at everything as an overall function here, and knowing that you'll be ready and prepared for the newest and greatest operating system as it comes to be. So let's go back to our keynote as we're getting up on our hour here. I want to make sure that you have time to ask some questions. I see that there are a lot of questions around the audio. I do apologize sincerely. This webinar is being recorded, so we will make sure to get we will test the audio, and if we need to re-record it, we absolutely will. But we apologize if there's been some challenges with the audio in this case. I know I've lost a few people, unfortunately, so we will take a look at that. One question. Configuration profiles are only available in Jamf Now Plus, correct? And that is correct. So it's not that so blueprints and configuration profiles are essentially, they're similar, if not the same. So in the standard profile for the restrictions, if you look at the restrictions in blueprints, a lot of those cover, or a lot of the elements in the blueprint rather, are covered just as much are going to be the same ones in Jamf Now Plus. Where the configuration profiles become handy in Jamf Now Plus is that there are things like VPN controls or Apple TV remote, or in some cases even managing certain Apple TVs. Let me rephrase that, because you can't actually push this to an Apple TV yet. But there are some controls within Apple Configurator 2, again, like VPNs or printer controls, that you may want to actually add to a Jamf Now interface. So ultimately, by going through some of those configuration profiles, using either, again, Profile Manager, maybe an older MDM profile that you have from something, or maybe Apple Configurator, you can actually build a unique custom profile, add it to Jamf Now Plus, and distribute it alongside or in conjunction with your blueprint and see some success that way. So it's definitely a great option for anyone that's looking to try and use Jamf Now Plus, and it's a huge, huge time saver in terms of having everything at your fingertips as much as possible. So yes, configuration profiles or custom profiles within Jamf Now are only available with Jamf Now Plus. Any other questions? Okay, let's try and finish off the presentation. Again, I can't apologize enough for the audio challenges that many of you have had. We will send out an updated webinar recordings. That way you guys have all the information. In the meantime, mark your calendars for the updates. iPadOS and iOS 13.1 just came out on September 24th. So if you haven't already done those updates, please do so. There's some really awesome features built into both of them that are just amazing. macOS Catalina is slated for October, so keep your eyes out for what that looks like. And then tvOS 13 still to be determined. I'm hoping it's in October, just based on some of the great new features within Apple TV Plus, as well as obviously I want to see the arcade on my Apple TV as well. So we're looking forward to seeing all of those. If you have not already planned for our Jamf Nation User Conference coming up in November, strongly suggest that you start booking your tickets and reservations now. Hotels are almost all booked up in Minneapolis. There's still obviously some space available depending on where you're traveling to and from. But we have some great guest speakers that cover everything from enterprise to small, medium-sized businesses, healthcare, education, retail, signage, you name it. There are great representation across the board from people that use Jamf, and as well from people that want to learn how to use it more in depth. So keynote sessions, demos, and labs, support desks, one-to-one meetings with your account executives or others, all of those are available to you. This is a great option right now. There's an upgrade guide for beginners. If you're looking at this right now, I'm going to leave this here for a quick moment, but I've also given you the direct link, I believe, to this particular upgrade and the resources. But if you take your phone, just get into the camera app, and don't take a picture of it. Just literally hold that QR code into the window. It will actually guide you directly to the upgrade guide that's available on our website. So I'll leave that there for just a quick second. Oh, someone just told me that tvOS was released on September 24th as well. I haven't updated my tvOS yet. Looks like I'm going to be having some fun soon. All right, so that is the ebook. Most of these resources are available to you in that resource packet. So the jamf.com/products will help you to understand how to either register for Jamf Now or get a request for a demo on Jamf School, Jamf Pro, or Jamf Connect. Jamf 100 courses are great to be able to help navigate or increase your knowledge on why Jamf is so important for Apple deployment solutions. Jamf Nation, also a direct link in there. You have the ability to use Jamf Nation for again, that peer-to-peer connection and making sure that you can have everything identified through some of your peers. If you work with Apple Store business teams, please do connect with them. They have a way of getting in touch with us that is unique and only available through them. So, they'll have access to us almost at any time of the day. Though don't tell them that, because I do want to get some sleep. If you're working with your carrier or channel partners, same thing to be said. We have some great representation and some great reps that are really working with those carrier and channel partners. And then, as I said, that QR code for managing Apple OS upgrades, I did provide a link for that within the resource packet. So please feel free to visit those. That website. That will give you a video that is a more in-depth look at the OS upgrades, primarily as it relates to Jamf Pro. But there's still some great information in there that you may find handy as you're thinking about how you want to deploy Apple through your organization. These are my great counterparts, Danielle Dries and Kat Garbus, senior evangelists that handle, whether it's Danielle handling the East Coast or Kat representing and handling the enterprise companies, industries that are related. We're all really working hard to make sure that you have the best information and the best access to Apple management solutions available. So don't hesitate to get a hold of us in any way, shape, or form. Thank you very much for attending today's webinar. Happy Jamfing, and please let us know how we can support you as you continue to grow your Apple deployment solutions. Have a great week, everyone. Take care.